Let me ask you something. If I told you that the difference between staying broke and building serious wealth comes down to just 165 days, would you believe me? Not 165 days of working harder, not 165 days of some crazy side hustle, just 165 days of making one simple decision differently than you do right now. Most people will spend 40 years working, saving bits of money here and there, and still end up with barely enough to retire on. But there's a small group of people who figured out something different. They understood that wealth isn't built by time, it's built by a single pattern repeated over and over again. And the weird part? This pattern only needs to work 165 times to completely change your financial life. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you isn't some get-rich-quick scheme. It's actually how wealth has been built for centuries. And once you see it, you'll never think about money the same way again. Here's what most people believe about getting rich. They think it's about finding that one big opportunity, the perfect stock, the right business idea, the winning lottery ticket. So they wait. They save their money in a bank account earning basically nothing, waiting for that magical moment when everything clicks. Or they think wealth is about earning more money, so they focus on climbing the corporate ladder, getting raises, switching jobs for higher salaries. And don't get me wrong, earning more is great. But here's the thing. Most people who earn more just spend more. The lifestyle inflates with the income. There's this phenomenon psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. You get a raise, you feel good for a few weeks, then you adapt. You upgrade your car, move to a nicer apartment, start eating out more often, and suddenly you're making 50% more than you used to, but you're saving the same amount, or less. But here's what's really happening under the surface. While you're waiting for the perfect opportunity or chasing the next raise, something invisible is eating away at your money every single day. Inflation. It's not dramatic, you don't feel it happening, but every year your money loses about 3 to 4% of its value just sitting there. Let's say you have $10,000 saved up. You're proud of yourself. You worked hard for that money. But if you just leave it in a regular savings account for 10 years, that $10,000 will only buy you what about $7,000 buys today. You didn't spend a single dollar, but you lost $3,000 of purchasing power anyway. This is the trap most people are stuck in. They're not moving backward because they're bad with money. They're moving backward because they're playing defense when they should be playing offense. So what's different about the people who actually build wealth? They understood something crucial. Money sitting still is money dying. But money that's working, money that's generating more money, that's money that's alive. And the secret isn't about having a lot of money to start with. It's about understanding how money multiplies. Let me introduce you to the most powerful wealth-building concept most people never learn. It's called compound growth. But forget the technical definition for a second. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real life. Imagine you have $1,000. Nothing crazy, just $1,000 you managed to save up. Now, instead of letting it sit in your bank account slowly losing value, you put it somewhere that grows by 10% over the next 6 months. After 6 months, you don't have $1,000 anymore. You have $1,100. You made $100 without doing any extra work. No overtime, no side hustle. Your money worked while you slept. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people at this point would take that $100 and spend it. New shoes, night out with friends, a small treat for all their hard work. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying your money. But this is the exact moment where two paths split. Path 1. You take the $100 profit and spend it. You're back to $1,000. In another 6 months, if you get another 10% return, you make another $100. You do this 165 times, and you've made $16,500 total. Not bad. Path 2. You leave everything alone. That $1,100 sits there and grows another 10% in the next 6 months. But now you're not making $100, you're making $110 because you're earning growth on your original $1,000 plus the $100 you made before. This is where it gets wild. If you do this 165 times, meaning you let your money compound 165 times at 10% growth each time, you don't end up with $1,750. You end up with over $78 million. Let me say that again. $1,000 turned into $78 million by doing the exact same thing 165 times and never touching it.
Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like fantasy. Where are you getting 10% growth every 6 months? That's not realistic. And you're right to be skeptical. But here's the thing. I'm not saying you need to find some magical investment that doubles your money every year. I'm showing you the math behind how wealth actually builds. Because once you understand the principle, you can apply it to realistic situations.
Let's talk about what this really means in the real world. The stock market, over the long term, averages about 10% growth per year. Not every 6 months, per year. Some years it's up 20%, some years it's down 10%, but averaged out over decades, it's about 10% annually. So if we adjust our example to be more realistic, if you invest $1,000 and it grows at 10% per year, and you keep adding just $100 every single month, do you know what happens? In 30 years, you'd have over $230,000. You only put in about $37,000 of your own money. The other $193,000, that's your money making money. That's compound growth doing the heavy lifting. But here's the psychological insight that changes everything. The reason most people never build wealth isn't because they don't have enough money to start. It's because they can't resist touching it. They see $1,100 and think, I made $100. I should reward myself. And that decision, that one moment of taking the profit out, costs them everything. Think about it like planting a tree. You plant an acorn. After a year, a tiny sprout appears. You get excited and pull it up to see if roots are growing. You look at it, maybe show your friends, then plant it again. But you damage the roots. The growth is stunted. That's what happens when you interrupt compound growth. Every time you pull money out, you're resetting the process. You're going back to the acorn instead of letting it become the oak tree. And here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to hear. The difference between people who retire with $50,000 and people who retire with $5 million isn't that one group was smarter or worked harder. It's that one group left their money alone and let it compound. The other group kept interrupting the process. There's a famous story about Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the world. Someone calculated that 99% of his wealth was built after he turned 50 years old. Not because he suddenly got better at investing at 50, but because he'd been investing since he was a kid, and by age 50, compound growth had kicked into high gear. He wasn't making smarter decisions at 70 than he was at 30. He was just benefiting from 40 more years of his money multiplying itself. So what does this mean for you? First, understand that wealth building is not about timing the market or finding the next big thing. It's about starting now, no matter how small, and never stopping. If you're 25 and you start investing $200 a month in a basic index fund, by the time you're 65, you'll likely have over $1.2 million. You only put in $96,000 of your own money. The rest is compound growth. But if you wait until you're 35 to start investing the same $200 per month, you'll end up with about $470,000. Still good, but you lost $730,000 by waiting 10 years. That 10-year delay cost you more than 7 times what you actually invested.
This is why the 165-day concept matters. It's not literally about 165 days. It's about understanding that every cycle of growth you miss is costing you exponentially more than you realize. Second, stop thinking about investing as something you do when you have extra money. That's backwards. Investing should be the first thing you do with your money, not the last. Pay yourself first, even if it's just $50 a month, even if it feels insignificant. Because here's what happens psychologically when you start investing, even small amounts. You begin to see yourself differently. You're not just someone who works for money anymore. You're someone whose money works for them. And that identity shift changes how you make decisions. You start asking different questions. Instead of, can I afford this? You start asking, is this worth delaying my financial freedom? Instead of, how can I make more money? You start asking, how can I make my money grow faster? Third, understand the power of consistency over intensity. Most people approach wealth building like a sprint. They get excited, invest a bunch of money all at once, watch it obsessively, panic when it drops, and pull everything out. Then they swear off investing and go back to keeping money in their savings account. But wealth isn't built in sprints. It's built in marathons. It's the person who invests $100 every single month for 40 years who wins, not the person who invests $10,000 once and then stops. And here's why consistency wins. When you invest regularly, you're buying when the market is high and when it's low. When prices drop, your $100 buys more. When prices rise, your earlier investments are worth more. You're not trying to time anything, you're just showing up. This is called dollar cost averaging, and it's the closest thing to a cheat code in investing. You remove the emotional decisions, you remove the guesswork, you just keep going. So let me bring this all back to where we started. You only need 165 days to become rich. What I really mean is this: you only need to understand one principle and apply it consistently 165 times, or 200 times, or 500 times. The number doesn't matter. What matters is that you start and you don't stop. Most people will watch this video, think, that makes sense, and then do nothing. They'll go back to spending everything they earn, keeping money in accounts that lose value every year, waiting for someday when they have enough to start investing. But someday never comes, because there's always a reason to wait, always something else to buy, always another excuse. The people who build wealth aren't special. They're not smarter. They don't have secret information. They just understood that time is the most valuable asset in investing, and they refuse to waste it. Every month you delay is a month of compound growth you'll never get back. Every year you wait costs you exponentially more than you realize. So here's my challenge to you. Start today. Not next month when you get paid, not next year when you get a raise. Today. Even if it's just $20. Open an investment account, buy a simple index fund, and then do it again next month and the month after that.
Because the secret to wealth isn't about having money, it's about understanding how money grows and then getting out of its way and letting it do what it does best: multiply. The question isn't whether you can afford to start investing, the question is whether you can afford not to. Your future self is watching you right now. Make the decision that person will thank you for.